Tulsa Titans are those in our city who aren't backing down. They stay positive when things look hard. They lead with integrity, even when it requires sacrifice. They take their family life as serious as their work life. This show features them to teach and inspire the next generation among us. Welcome to Tulsa Titans, highlighting leaders in our local community who are making a difference. I'm excited. I've got a friend and also a mentor today, Mark Tedford with Tedford Insurance. Tedford Insurance has been around for 43 years. It's got 7 locations. Mark is the current CEO. Mark, you also help pour into Ronald McDonald Foundation. I know you guys do several other nonprofit organizations. You're on several boards. And then for leadership development, Mark helps run Faith in Business and executive leadership lunches once a month and once a quarter. Mark, I'm glad to have you on.
Thanks for having me
on. Just past that, can you share a little bit just with the audience about what you may think is important as far as it pertains to the interview?
About myself.
Yeah.
So second generation business person. So my dad, obviously we've been around 43 years. I didn't start it. I'm not that old, but my dad started in 1978. So second generation business person. I really don't look at myself as an entrepreneur, but really more as a business person, because I took over ongoing, business, which has its own, challenges, that type of thing. We're a local independent. We're in 7 communities. We really try to give back to the communities. And so being involved in not-for-profits is important to us, and try to make a difference in the local community.
Oh, perfect. Well, and so we're still towards the beginning of the year. One of the things that I like to ask the guests is, it's that whole New Year's resolution time. Are there things in the business or for you personally that you've looked at and you've cut out this year? And what are 3 things that you've really concentrated on for 2021?
Yeah, so I'm real big into time management, and especially on the personal side, everybody talks about being, everybody's addicted to their, cell phone or to social media or that type of thing. And so with the election last year and all the, drama that went around that, I just kind of got too much of it. So I decided to really try to limit the amount of social media that I was doing. Some of you guys have probably read The Social Dilemma. One of the things I picked out of that piece was to turn off your notifications on your phone. And so I went through and basically disabled all the notifications that weren't, explicitly family or business oriented. So, so my employees can text me, I'll get notification there, but I don't get notifications for Facebook or LinkedIn or, that type of thing. And I think that's really helped limit the amount of time that I've been spending on that type of stuff. And there's a lot of good resources now. I mean, your phone will tell you how much time you spend on each app. You get resources on your computer that'll tell you where you're spending your time. And so that's what I've been trying to do, is kind of limit my time. I do also kind of allocate to each. I break down my time and classify it into what am I spending my time on, to things that are like working on my business, things that are working in my business, sales related activities, personal development type time, and that type of thing, and try to really watch, what time I'm spending where. So that's kind of what I looked at this year. And I do goals every year, broken down between, business goals, personal goals as far as health and fitness and personal development, and, again, also business goals and that type of thing. So I've got, as far as what I'm trying to add in this year, I'm a big reader. So I do try to read about 2 books a month. So some hard copy, some audiobook. And so I begin of the year, pick out what books that I'm going to try to read or reread, or, that type of thing. And so, set up for the year as far as my reading schedule. So.
Awesome. No, that's great. And so when it comes to, you talked about reading, and consuming information. So you've cut off a lot of the social. What I find in younger leaders, and we've talked about this with previous podcast guests, is they consume a lot. So you mentioned audio and physical books. Can you just share with your process? Because what I find is they almost get information overload and they look at reading all the books as an accomplishment, but there's lack of action. So what's kind of your process around taking keys out of those resources and moving forward with them?
Right. Normally I'll take, I'm real big on OneNote. So I put like all my personal notes in OneNote. And so if I'm reading a book that I'm really trying to get something business oriented out of, I'll do kind of a summary of the book in OneNote and try to see what can I capture into, you know, my schedule or my thought processes or that type of thing. And so that's what I try to do. I keep kind of notes throughout the year of kind of the takeaways from each, business book. So that's how I, try to do it that way. I mean, some books more than others. Some books are I get a lot out of, and I can take a lot of takeaways, and some not so much. Maybe it's good that you've read it, but really not a lot of direct takeaways, from it. Some things just reinforce what you're already doing, so, it's interesting to see how some people are managing themselves, their time, and that type of thing. Once you buy into a system, like we talked about traction, I'm a big traction guy, and so, it's a process, an operating system, if you will, for executives, and it has its own ways of organizing your time and that type of thing. So if you're really committed into that, you can take some other books and how they're suggesting that you manage your time, but you're not going to change. If you're committed to traction, you're not. You may use it to tweak something, but you're not going to use 2 or 3 different ways of managing your time. You only can really commit to one system and that type of thing. So it's just having an awareness of maybe what's out there, what other people are doing. I mean, there's some books that are very applicable to what we do, some books that aren't as much. So you just take away what's applicable to your business, and just have an awareness of what else is out there for stuff that doesn't directly apply to you.
No, that's great. And when I talk to other leaders, my kind of likening there, and we don't realize we do it, is, you don't take a batter that hit a home run and tweak a swing. If
Right.
it's a process that works, you don't mess with it while it's working.
Right.
What about on a daily level? Is there something daily that you do or have done that has allowed you to be successful?
So I'm real big into, again, I keep insurance is very transactional, first off. And so maybe more so than other industries, we've got a lot of deadlines that are daily or weekly. And so normally I've got a lot of transactions to keep up with. And so I'm real big on keeping, a task manager. I use Salesforce mainly for that. And so, I'll have a daily list that I have to maintain on Salesforce to kind of keep me on track. The traction process is real good. It breaks everything down into a weekly pace. And so weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually. And so it's real good about taking you from your short-term daily thinking out into your long-term strategy. And so I think, especially for one of sales like myself or business, it's, being able to take your long-term goals and integrate them into what do I need to do today that aligns with the long-term goals. Sometimes it's very difficult for people. They maybe understand where they want to go, but they don't understand how what they're doing today relates to that. And so traction's really good. I think that helping you back into, it's more of a weekly thing than a daily, but you can take that weekly and push it back into a daily to-do list pretty easily. So, but traction is a process that I use that helps me do that. It's pretty effective at it.
Okay, great. So again, I mean, why reinvent the wheel when somebody wrote a
Right.
machine, right? Pour into it.
Right.
Something I admire about you, I've been and worked with several of your professionals, and I've actually interviewed some of your C-levels before, and you equip great leaders. You put great leaders in place, but then, like Raj personally, you have great leaders around you personally. as a professional, growing a business and then staffing great leaders and then putting great leaders in your life personally, both business and personal, what's your thought process on that and kind of how you reflected in that area in the past?
Well, I mean, internally, the business can only be as successful as the competencies of those you have in your business. So, having good leaders around you is very important. And as you're growing from, maybe entrepreneur to um, where like it's just you to like a smaller business to really the point where you're the owner and you have staff management, it becomes vitally important. And I think that's a ceiling for some people, being able to manage C-suite executives is much harder than people really think that it should be. And so, one, finding those with talent to be able to fill those roles, and then managing and getting them equipped and buying into the mission of the organization is very hard. So I don't know that there's a real necessarily secret sauce to it. It takes one, it takes knowing what your mission is, and what type of people would fit in well with it, and then the rigor of hiring the right person, and if they're not a good fit, um, being disciplined enough to recognize it and get them to the right seat or get another person in there, that type of thing. That process is very hard. I think that a lot of people don't really see that. That it surprised me as I was, I used to be I was the owner and middle manager at the same time. And the time that I was moving to just the owner spot and I had middle managers under me, I was really shocked about how difficult that process was. And it took me 2 or 3 iterations. And so, I guess I wasn't smart enough to figure it out on the first run through. It took me 2 or 3 times to really get it right. And it's not that the person that I was hiring wasn't necessarily the right person, but maybe I didn't have the processes ready yet. I didn't train them properly. They were a competent person, but maybe I was putting them in a role that they were not competent in. It took me a while to learn that I had a role in it myself, as far as having those things in order by the time it didn't have the right person fill in. And so that is very difficult process to get down, but um, that's the goal everybody tries to get to. Most business books talk about leadership and delegation and strategy and these things. And so I think that's why that most of the books are that way, because that's the hardest part, really, is deciding what direction the company's going to go and who's the best fit to lead it and that type of thing. So
Sure.
again, it's not always obvious that it is, but I think it is.
No, there's gold there. I mean, I think it's really important that you said some of this stuff is hard, because the books are the things that we look at with people on the top of the mountain talk about all of them, but not many are very realistic to share the failure and to share the emotions and hiring the wrong person or hiring a person too quickly and then having to fire certain people. You also said, which I think is really, really important, is are they a culture fit? Do I hire just on talents, or do they fit the departments and the groups they have to work alongside? I hired, and you said I hired and didn't have processes in place. Okay, so it's not just the right person. It's actually the person showing up on site, understanding the culture, the systems you work in, and having things in place for them to be successful. That's all really good.
Right.
What
Right.
about, so work-life balance, you run a lot, you're involved in a lot of groups. I'm involved in some of those with you. I think they're great. From a professional that's been in the business a long time and is helping to further grow their company, taking a break, and what do you enjoy doing and why? And then what kind of professionals do you make sure you keep around yourself kind of outside of Tedford Insurance?
Right. As far as personal management, I think I naturally kind of a workaholic, and so I think kind of early in my career I would put And part of the way I would, you could say, maybe justify my existence or really feeling like I was doing what I should be doing is to put in the huge hours. And so early in my career, I would put in just huge hours. Um, and there's a real risk of burnout when you do that. And I think a lot of leaders and executives, business owners suffer that. They don't pace themselves, and then they burn out. So I think leisure is needed, you know, and a break is needed. And I think if you don't plan in, you know, you don't schedule in a break, then you could have burnout, and so that's a real problem. And so I used, you know, for someone whose work is not very physical, which mine's not, then doing something, um, you know, fit for physical fitness is a good mental break because one, you're getting your exercise, which you're not getting at your work, you know, but it's also giving your mind a break and giving your mind a chance to recoup. So I'm a real big advocate for doing something physical outside. You know, mine historically was, you know, running or biking, that I really enjoyed to get out. But you know, just anything it's also giving yourself a mental break. You know, I found when I would run, I would, you know, unwind everything in my brain that happened during the day or whatever, and it was a good break for me. So I think that's very important, you know, piece of it. You can't hammer it, you know, go wall to wall all the time. You know, you'll burn out if you do that. And so it's important to give yourself a break. Now, as far as working around other people, as my role changed to from being, you know, when my dad was still around, I was, you know, again, like I said, I already described myself as a middle manager or you know, I was just in general production, you know, was my role. I was an agent, to the point where when he had passed away, that I really needed to fill the role of not just agent and, you know, middle manager, but leader. You know, I was the one that
Yeah.
needed to make decisions with my brothers. That they're, you know, that's one thing the leader has to provide. One thing you can't delegate as CEO is the direction, you know, the mission. Um, You still there? Yeah. I
Yep.
had a call come in. Sorry about that. But one thing you can't, you know, delegate is, you know, the mission and the strategy and that type of thing. So you still have to provide the direction. And also, my role kind of changed from again into being leader, then also a bit more business development than production. So that's kind of when I really started getting into, really trying to meet and be around other leaders. One, to kind of get a sense of how, you know, what they do to be successful, and you know, also for business it was good to see if there's some business that we can do together, you know, that type of thing. And you know, I think it's really true that, you know, you become kind of you become like the people you're around the most often. And so if you're around successful people that are doing the right thing, then you pick up their habits, and you learn from them and you collaborate with them, and it turns out to be a good thing. And so I've been very blessed to have had a lot of good friends that were also very successful business people that I could learn from and, you know, collaborate with.
No, that's great. So if I'm a businessman that's struggling or working too many hours, or I just realize the people that I'm hanging out with aren't bringing me up, which I think a lot of guys either don't hang out or they hang out with sometimes the wrong people. Where would you suggest that I look to get involved to meet some of these business professionals?
Right. You know, besides the obvious of different organizations that those business leaders would go to, like Faith in Business and that type of thing. If there's somebody you admire in your industry or a related industry, or just a business person that you admire, honestly, I would just suggest to give them a call and say you'd like to take them to lunch and ask them questions about what they do. I mean, most business people are very open about helping others and sharing their experience and that type of thing. And so I think that, you would probably get a pretty good response to, to do that, and just, ask, hey, what advice would you give me? I think most business people are pretty open with their advice, and want to help people. So I would, if you know someone goes to a meeting and you've seen them there and you want to know more about what they do, or you think that they have some information that would help you, just go up to them and ask them if you could get a little bit of their time to ask them. I think that'd be a good approach.
No, that's great. You get a lot from asking and nothing if you don't.
Right.
Just got to ask for the things that you want. And I think we can see in others what we want. We just need to ask for it. That's really good.
Yeah.
So I had the privilege before the call too to call Chad. I know one of your higher level guys over there, great guy, big heart, wants to change the community. So he's happy to help.
Yep.
But I said, hey, so, last year, I mean, your insurance industry, we talked, you've had to have a lot of hard conversations with clients. I said, but what does Mark Tedford mean to you? What does leadership mean to you? And Chad said time. He said, Mark's always willing to give his time to people, and he lets you talk. And that's really, really important. Can you speak on spending time with your team, with your staff, and what that looks like for you?
Yeah. So, when I first came in the business, it's funny because I felt like, my dad was very busy. He was again, a classic entrepreneur. Did everything, and didn't have any time. And so, for me to get him to help me in anything was like an act of Congress. And he did at times. There were some, if I was able to get an appointment with a very high value client, he would go with me. And there was a number of times he went out with me, but by and large part, he just was not available. And there wasn't really many other mentors in the organization at the time. So I kind of had to figure things out by myself. And so having that experience, I remember feeling that, it probably doesn't take that much extra time to just sit down with somebody and help them through the problem they're working on. Why make them recreate the wheel when you dealt with this 5 years ago and figured out a good way to handle it? Just sharing the techniques that I use to be successful, and passing those on. I think that's one thing in an organization that's important, is the leader kind of share his or her secret sauce. This is how I handled this. This is how I dealt with this. And so, kind of once, why would I have a salesman learn the 10 different ways to lose an account? Just tell them, hey, you're going to lose the account this way or that way. And, better than have them experience on their own. And so I've always was committed to, if I have the time to dig in and help the person, whether it's doing a joint call or sit down for an hour and work through something. So I've really tried to do that as much as possible. But a lot of it was out of my experience of feeling like when I was coming up, I didn't really have a lot of people really able to help me, and feel like if somebody could just tell me this, I could, and, I think me working through it, ultimately gave me better skill because I had to just fight through it. But, I think that, I was also a family member. And so I had that to lean on, that, this is why I'm doing that, is that, ultimately I'm going to be, the owner. But you have someone who's a staff person that doesn't have that background to fall back on, to have the owner support them by spending time with them and helping them is meaningful.
No, that's wonderful. And Chad mentioned family. He said, hey, what's really kind of a treasure about Tedford Insurance is we don't have a lot of turnover, because people feel like family. They're listened to and they feel like they're family. So obviously you doing that bears a lot of fruit.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things to do is recover once you have to let people go over there.
I had a manager tell me one time there was an agent who was kind of struggling, and they said, Mark, the only reason that guy made it is because you helped them. And I was like, well, yeah, but why wouldn't I help them? Why would we just throw a guy out there, to the wolves and have him, fend for himself, we should be helping them, as much as possible. I mean, and you could get into, and obviously what he was saying is there's sometimes people need too much help, and you have to watch that. But ultimately, I think you should be helping develop your personnel, become the people they can become,
Yeah. So you tend to fall, and you've seen some fruit for falling on the far left side of that, right? Is making sure
Yeah.
that, hey, I'd rather be over helpful than not be there for them.
Right.
Well, something in kind of coming off the time spent listening, that's what I heard from Chad. In the same
Mm-hmm.
kind of vein, there is one of the things I've admired about you is we talk about really hard things when we get together and chat, or when
Mm-hmm.
the guys, and you handle it well, and you handle it non-emotionally, and you're the
Mm-hmm.
last to speak. You listen to everything. You want all the facts. You want to make sure the people you're talking to genuinely understand what they're talking about, and you understand what they're asking before you can respond. And I have to bet that bears a lot of fruit in your leadership as well.
Yeah, I think, business is about weathering ups and downs. And, you're going to, being in business any amount of time, you're going to have a professional win, and you're going to have a professional disappointment. It's just kind of part of it. And I think part of the maturity as a business owner is really putting the failures in perspective. And, and it's more about, hey, did I do what I could? Did I do all I could do? And if I did, being at peace with whatever happens, And I think that comes sometimes with just with time and maturity. I know that when I was first in the business, I had a little bit of hard time at that. I would really be down after I would lose a piece of business or have something that didn't go the way that I wanted it to, and let it bother me for a long period of time. And on the flip side too, it's like I would be, have the, emotional high of having a big win, and sometimes it was, I let that affect, you know, my mood more than it should. Like I said, if I was in a good place mentally, if I just had a big win, I was in a bad place if I just had a big loss. And you know, you have to, your value, personal value, is not dependent on, just the latest success that you had, or your personal value is not diminished in any way just because you had a professional failure. And so I think it is important, for someone who's newer in the business, that an older owner can give them that perspective and say, you know what, you're going to be fine. um, you'll get the next one. You don't have to this uh, this issue, this loss, whatever, it has no ultimate impact on your career. You're going to push through and make it happen. And I think given that perspective is something that's important for a business leader. It's where it's not emotional, that you can just, it's just business. If you, when you have a win, when you have a loss, ultimately it's just business. And it's really fun when you have a win. When you have a loss, it's not fun, but it's not something that's devastating or whatever. You move on, and that just comes with time, I think.
Yeah, and that's great. Well, and again, being around leaders, you want to be around and asking all these questions, right?
Yeah.
You're not sitting there beating yourself up too much, because there's more, like you said, there's more failures to come, and we bear
Yeah.
more fruit if we learn from the failure than beat ourselves up.
Yeah.
So I think this is interesting. Second generation business owner, statistically, a lot of those businesses fall off big time, and you guys have grown. What's your why? So dad started the business and now you're running it. When you get up every morning, you talked in the past about burnout and overcoming that, but right now, when you get up, what is your why every day?
Well, I mean, the mission for Tedford Insurance is protecting the dreams uh, of our clients. And so, ultimately that's what we do, is help clients get past their toughest times. But as far as myself, I mean, I kind of sense that I've always kind of been an opportunist, and thought, you know, one should take advantage of the opportunities afforded them. And so I recognize being able to take over a family business was a great opportunity, and to really make, the agency something special, and so to make the agency all that it could be, Um, and so that's kind of my thing, is to take what we have and really try to make it be the best, age that we could be, that I can be the best person that I could be. And I felt like that, God's given me opportunity and talent and competencies to do what I do, and that I should show up and do my best as I could, as just kind of a way um, to honor the opportunities that I've been afforded. So that's kind of, my why.
No, that's great. Well, and then as far as taking your why and now pushing it all the way through your culture, what does that look like, in 2021? How are you distilling that same drive and the same kind of vision for what Tedford is and the why behind showing up and giving 100% to every employee?
Sure. I mean, as you grow, having the culture is very important, kind of even in role of quality control, meaning that um, you want your employees to be as passionate about your mission of protecting dreams as you are, and you want them to take it as seriously as you take it, and our core values are dependability, professionalism, and driven. And so we take these core values and apply them to our performance. And so every action, did we act in this manner? Did we were, you know, um, in the drivenness, did we, you know, do everything we needed to do to um, help the client to fix their problem? Were we there for the client when they needed us? Did we do a good professionalism? Did we do a good job arranging their coverage so that when they needed it the most, that it was there? I mean, insurance has it, um, we'll arrange an insurance program, and 95% of the clients never use it through the year. And so we're really not, did we do a good job with the insurance? I mean, everyone thinks so, but at the time of the claim, all is revealed. Whether we did a good job, we didn't do a good job, is finally revealed at the time the claim happens, and it comes out. And so the idea is that when we have our moment of truth, we better have been doing everything in the background properly, so that we can have a good experience for the client. And when you do your job right, and the client's in their most desperate time of need, and the company comes through, the program comes through like it was supposed to, it's a really good feeling, because you've really helped that person out. They've had a major fire or whatever it is. They're able to get back on their feet because you did your job as an insurance agent. And so you want everybody in the organization to feel that way and be passionate that way. And as a leader, I think the job is to evaluate how we're doing on the mission, and how we're doing on our core values, and mine whether our performance people are urgently working on the core values, are urgently doing their job the way they should be doing it. And as the organization grows, that job becomes harder and harder, to make sure that everyone in the organization is doing what they're supposed to be doing to meet the company's mission. So again, I think as the company grows, if a small company and just you and a couple people you're working very closely with, it's a little easier to drive culture than it is when you're have 7 locations and there's some people you only see a couple times a year. And so there are some challenges as you grow on that type front. Again, you just have to you have to just push to keep the culture, sound.
No, that's good. Especially how difficult it be, again, just the transparency of you got multiple locations that some of them aren't close to each other. And how do you spread it? I like the visual you give to the fire, right? To the actual disaster,
Mm-hmm.
the feeling that you showed of, hey, guys, that's a win. That was a really good representation.
Yep.
One last question. You mentioned Traction for Business, but
Mm-hmm.
a couple other books, right? So the Tedford house is burning down, right? But I know it's covered by insurance. And let's say you can grab
Mm-hmm.
books to really go back through, what would those books be for you and why?
The books over the years that were, impactful, um, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was big for me back in the day. I haven't read it in a while, but I still use some of the terminology from it, especially the 4 quadrants. It was real big for us, and applying that. Collins' Good to Great was an important book, a book that we tried to bring into the business and test some of the things that we did. I think Good to Great is a little bit, it's for larger corporations than maybe we were, but there's still some good concepts, in there. I really like the book, The Power of Habit, was really good. Again, insurance is very task oriented, transaction oriented. Time management is very important, and so building good habits is important. So I really felt like that was a really good book, and so that's probably some of the 3 that immediately come to mind. I like the author Malcolm Gladwell too. It's interesting. His books seem to be kind of sometimes don't have as much of a central theme, but they have a lot of good nuggets that you can pick out of it. And then of course Traction, like I said, Traction, we have bought into the whole way. That kind of guides our. And at the time that we started using Traction, we were not doing very well in our meetings and our organization. We were doing strategy. We were going through developing our mission and vision statements and core values and doing those things. Sure. But we weren't able to integrate them back into, and we were doing like a year budget. We were doing those things, but Traction really helped integrate. And not only that, I think there's also a tendency for an executive team to do all this thinking and strategizing and not really communicating that to the rest of the staff. Oh, so you're really, so you got this great plan worked out, you have this great strategy, and you're all excited about it, and no one knows anything what you're talking about. And so Traction does have a component where each of the executives go out into their departments and have meetings with those middle managers and line staff to disseminate what is happening on the executive team. And that was when we were able to integrate Traction enough to get it down into the rank and file employees, it was much more impactful. And that took probably 3 years at least, maybe 3-4 years until we were organized enough to make that happen. So that's one thing I think too about, you read a book or you read some material and it's good stuff, but sometimes you don't really think it's going to take. Sometimes, as far as building culture, is something that takes years really to effectively do. And I think people don't really accurately assess how much time and effort it's going to take to build these things. It's important, but it's something culture is not going to happen overnight. It's something that it takes the people who are going to buy in. Some will buy in real quick, some will buy in slow, some will never buy in. So it's like the ones that'll never buy in will slowly opt out of the organization. And if you do a good job of hiring people that are good culture fits, then over time you'll have mostly people who are great culture fits for you. But it's not something just going to immediately happen. And hey guys, we're going to have a culture like this. It just doesn't happen that way. And so, yeah, and that's one thing I like about Traction is it's something that you can start small and you can slowly, ramp up and integrate it. And at the end of the day, it's a good technique to build culture. Good book, has good information, good way to build culture.
No, that's great. I wish I could remember who said it. For a lot of the goals and things that we want to do, somebody, you see the people again on the top of the mountain in your eyes in this one thing, and we underestimate by like 2 or 3 times that, right? How much time it's actually going to take. And somebody said a phrase that lines up really well with that if you just know that each one of these things you want is going to take 3 times as much time and effort as you're thinking, you'll be successful when you commit to it.
I saw a picture of Jeff Bezos in like a one-person office, and here's Jeff Bezos and Amazon back in 1974.
Yeah.
You know, he's the one guy in the office. You know, so yeah, it does. Things take time. I mean, people look at successful people. You think, oh, it just happened for them, and you don't really see the years and that they slaved away and were building their organizations. You really, that's not celebrated. The hard work to get there is not celebrated. Just
Right.
the success is, you know.
Yeah, just the result of all the hard work.
Yeah.
Something else you said is really important. So our niche is the 9 to 90 employees, right? And we'll deploy, much like I'm sure you deploy new policies, and we send out emails to every manager, all the ownership, and majority of the time, and I think this is why you said it's so important from that traction book, we'll show up on site and 80% of the staff has no idea we're showing up.
Yeah.
And it happens all
Yeah.
the time. And so anybody listening, that's so important that when you're making a change that affects certain departments or the whole company, or your departments are going to even interact with each other differently because of this thing, everybody has to know.
Yeah. I think too, it's the job of management and leadership to make sure the communication's happening. Too many times management says, I sent an email, nobody read it, it's their fault. And I think that's a wrong way to look at it. Yeah. Again, if you're the one that's in charge of culture, if the culture isn't happening, it's your fault. Okay. It cannot be the fault of the employees. They're the one you're trying to lead, right? And so that means you need to get with them and work with them. And so this over communication's big. I mean, communication organization's hard anyway. Yeah. And about the time you're sick of saying something is the time they're just starting to get it, you know? So, you know, sending the one email never gets it done. And I think what's important as a leader is to mine for feedback, you know? So you have someone that's your direct report, you know, and you're trying to get some new initiative going, is to ask, you know, what problems they see with it, what issues they have with it, and where do you see us in, you know, not getting it done, and getting that feedback. I think that's way that doesn't happen enough. You know, I think that sometimes as leaders we don't want to hear the negative feedback when that's exactly what we should be hearing, because that's the honest feedback, you know. And so, and that in this area of culture, that's big. It's like, you know, where are we, you know, we say we're going to do this, where are we not making that happen? And if you're and if the employee will tell you, one, it tells you that they trust you enough, they'll tell you something that maybe you don't want to hear, but then two, it's probably very accurate and very honest, and then allows you to fix the problem. You know, we'd have clients that were really abrasive clients and always complaining, and I would tell the staff that client is helping you because he's telling you where you're blowing it and giving you an opportunity to fix it. The client that's the issue is the one that's never saying anything and saying everything's fine, and then you wake up one day and they've moved their business, because they weren't happy the last 2 years and they just weren't telling you. And so it's the same thing as employees. Employee that is sometimes the employee that's giving you the negative feedback and you think is, you know, the gadfly and the problem employee might be the person that's doing you a favor because he's telling you where you're missing it.
No, that's great. When I think too, you know, you're talking 7 sites and dozens and dozens of employees. What's important, a lot of the feedback you're getting, you wouldn't know without them.
Right.
You know, and then the other thing you said was really important is extreme ownership. Is leadership rises and falls on in the shoulders of the leader. Right. So you can't just be sending emails. It's good.
Right.
So
I think too many times what I've seen is people want to blame the employee, the person that working under them too much. The manager has created the process, created the management structure, done the training, all of the incentive packages they manage. And then at the time that there's a failure, they want to say it's the employee, it's all the employee. And it's just not possible for it all to be the employee when the manager's control of all those other factors. And so my thing is that you do have to take ownership of all those things, you know.
No, that's good. So Mark, after this interview, if somebody has a question, like you said, just ask. There's so many ways that people try to get a hold of each other nowadays with social media and things like that. What's your preferred method of communication?
I like, I guess, good old fashioned, if I can call it that, email.
Yeah.
Um, Probably the best. I do read my email every day. Um, and so, with all the other ways to communicate, sometimes, even text can be more immediate, but sometimes text for me is just that immediate, it's the immediate information. I don't save the text as much as I do like an email. So email is probably best. Phone, um, um, I do have an executive secretary that helps me manage the phone calls and stuff coming in on my calendar. So communication with her works pretty good for me as well.
Okay, perfect. And just the Tedford main number then?
Tedford main number or mark@tedford.net.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody's Kellen Cowan, owner of New Wave Solutions. Mark, thank you for giving today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.